Hey everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video on my channel. So today's video is inevitable. I knew it was coming. I've never done it before and I'm kind of scared, but I thought I would take you guys on this journey with me and maybe we can learn through my mistakes, or maybe it will go awesome and I will have no mistakes. But my Copic marker needs to be refilled. It's empty. Or empty enough, dry enough that I can't color with it. So let me show you what happens when I use this color. This is BV04 Blueberry. So let me show you what happens. So this is a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock that I'm coloring on. This is what happens when I color with this marker. So it's really dry and it's really sticky, and I can't lay down an even layer of ink at all. It is gummy and just dried up. I've got nothing left in this marker. And even doing the chisel tip, I'm getting the same result, and it's just empty. I had done this illustration earlier this year, and I had used this color at the very top to create my skyline, just to create that darkest part. And then even then I noticed that this marker was giving way a little bit, and I was quite shocked because I haven't really used this a lot. I've only used it in small doses, so I'm even skeptical if the marker wasn't that full to begin with. But I need to fill it. So I bought a refill. And so this is what the refill looks like. So it basically comes in this bottle here, and it says it's 25 cc. And so I'm not exactly sure what that equals, but I've heard that you can get quite a few refills out of one refill container. I also picked up a colorless blender refill, and I'll show you what that looks like. I picked up the largest one, and so this one here is, let's see if there's a size on it. This one's 200 milliliter. So hopefully this colorless blender will last me a long time. There's two sizes. I picked up the biggest one, but I also need to fill up my BV04. So I know that there's a nozzle you can get for the end that looks like a needle to insert into the tip. If you wanted to inject it down into the barrel. I don't have that, and so I'm just gonna freehand this and see what happens. I'm really nervous, but let's open this up and get started. Okay, so this is pretty much what it is. It's this little nozzle, and the ink is like right up at the top. I can see it if I even give the slightest little pressure onto this bottle. Maybe you can see it just kind of moving up to the top there. I'm really nervous to do this. Now, I was reading on the Copic website, and it said to do it from the chisel tip side. You can take this out, but you can also add the ink without removing the tip. So that's what I'm going to try. It also recommends removing both ends. There's something about the pressure and the distribution of ink is easier when both caps are off. So you want to make sure that you do take both caps off. I did read that. So my goal here is just to drop a little bit at a time onto this chisel nib and let it drip into the barrel. So let's, oh, I'm so nervous. Let's see what happens. So far I haven't dripped any on my desk, which is great because I don't really want to make a mess. And it seems to be taking the ink drops pretty well. I can see them soaking into the nib, and I assume it's pulling down into the barrel, so that's all good. And I can see that the nib's getting darker, so I know that this is being refilled. And it seems like when I drop the drops on now, I've probably done about 12 on each side or so. It really seems like it takes a little bit longer for it to absorb. So that must mean it's working. I'm going to try, yeah, that one's probably not great. The thing about this side is that it's got a hole because the hole is round and the chisel tip is flat, it's got a little space to pull that ink into without hitting the edge of the barrel, which is really great for this. Now, here's the tricky thing. I don't know how much to put in. I'm going to test the brush tip here in a second and see if it's coming back to life. I assume that this part would be because I've been putting ink to it. I could probably add a little bit of ink to this as well if I wanted to liven it up, but I want to make sure that it's coming out. So I'm going to test this again on my scrap piece of paper and see. So it doesn't look like it's hit yet. I don't want to wreck my brush nib, so I'm going to keep going. I do have to say, for the price that I paid for this refill, and I paid, I think, around, it's like $5 and some change Canadian. And to be able to refill this marker quite a few number of times, I've heard upwards of 4 to 5 refills per refill container for your marker. I mean, if you think about the cost of buying a new Copic marker, it's just, it's amazing that this is an option. It's great. These markers are so wonderful, and it is expensive to buy, so it's nice that I can just quickly refill it if it's empty, and it kind of gives me peace of mind when I'm working on my artwork. I'm not afraid to use my favorite color, especially if I know I have this refill on hand. I'm not going to be as hesitant to use this blue now that I have the refill for it. Now, I think this is going to take a little bit of ink. I just held this up to the light, my ink refill container, and I've barely made a dent in the ink level inside the container. So I think that I'm probably going to have to put quite a bit in here to get this filled back up. I can still see that this brush tip has white spots on it, so I know it's still dry. I don't know if that's picking up on camera, but I know that it's got quite a ways to go. I mean, I could easily cheat and throw some ink on the brush, and I probably will near the end of the process here, but I really wanted to test it and see if it would pull down to that brush. Because you would think if you're holding it on the angle, it's going to run down once it drips off of the nib inside and run to that brush, but I'm not quite sure. I've never done this before, so I'm kind of not sure what to expect, but I have done a lot of research. I knew this day was coming. Okay, so I'm going to test this again. Let's see if we got any action at all. No, nothing. And I wonder, I'm going to put some on the brush nib now just to see if I can bring that back to life. I mean, maybe, hopefully it's not clogged up. It was really sticky when it was out of ink. I don't know if that's like a tendency of these. I'm not sure. I have never heard anyone make that comment, so I worry that my brush nib is actually, I don't know, wrecked or something. It seems to be, looks like it's going to take quite a bit of ink, so I'm going to keep going here on the end. So I've been doing this for a few minutes, and I've made like a tiny dent in the levels. Let's see, I'm probably like 1 tick below 25 there. So I haven't put a lot in, but I've gotten to the point where I'm actually holding this against the nib and just slightly pressing to get a solid flow of ink out of the nib, and as long as it's not swelling up too much, I think it's going in okay, and it's a little bit easier than doing a drip by drip by drip. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now, and I find it's working, getting the ink in there faster, and so I think that this is going to help fill it quicker. So when I do this, I'm literally laying the applicator of the ink refill bottle right on top of that chisel nib and letting it connect with that, and it's pulling the ink right into the chisel nib. The chisel nib works great. It pulls the ink in immediately. So I'm just slightly pressing on the ink refill container, and it's picking up the ink as it comes out immediately. And I can see that the chisel nib like works great. It's taking all that ink and It's completely rejuvenated that nib. So, I mean, this is great. So we're getting somewhere, but we haven't got to the brush tip actually picking up the ink yet on the other side, and it might take time for it to lay down maybe. I'm going to try angling this and just getting some ink through this side, but it is really hard because it's really tight to the barrel, so it doesn't want to escape down the edges like on the other side. But hopefully if it can absorb some of the ink, it'll get inside the nib into the core part of it, which I think is really dried out right now. Ideally, you wouldn't let your markers get this bad, I guess. And I normally wouldn't. I just didn't have a refill, and I had never done this before, so I knew in the back of my mind it needed to be done. And it's been on my shopping list. Okay, so I've made a mess. Oh my god, I've made a really big mess. Yeah, so I was filling it and it started to not take the ink as fast, so I think that it is actually getting to the point where it has what it needs, or at least at this end. And I'm actually going to show you how to clean this up. I planned this as well. I actually didn't plan to make this mess, but I planned on cleaning up my Copic. That's interesting. This is actually sticky, so that would explain why the nib was sticky. But I think that this is actually getting what it needs, and I mean, I thought that maybe I was going a little too fast, but it seems like it's taking longer to absorb this ink at all. And so looking at the bottle, I've probably used 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks. There's 25 tick marks, and I've probably used 4 of them at this point. It looks like that's how far it's down. This brush nib's still kind of concerning me though, because it keeps showing white spots, and I've tried to put a considerable amount of ink on the brush nib, but it doesn't seem to be responding the same way as the chisel nib does. I don't think it can handle a lot of ink, and it's probably pulling it back into the barrel. So I'm hoping that this can settle. I store my markers horizontally, so I'm hoping that this can settle and maybe some of that ink can float between those ends, which I think is what's going to happen here. Wow, that looks amazing. That's so much better than it was. Okay, so I think we're making progress here for sure. I'm just going to put a little bit more on this, and then we'll do some cleanup. I'm not going to need too much. So I've got a lot of cleanup to do. So it's recommended on the Copic site to use rubbing alcohol to clean up these markers with. And so what I've done is I have a spare little dish here of some rubbing alcohol. And I've got some Q-tips to help clean the, well, I'll clean the marker with, because that's where I'm going to start here. So I just rub the rubbing alcohol on top, and it just activates that ink quickly, and you can see it's cleaning right up right away. If you've ever gotten your Copic marker on anything, you know that it is a pain to clean up if it dries, and you can't spit bath it, because I've tried, and you can't just use Windex or regular household cleaner. It just doesn't work. You need the alcohol. The other reason to clean up your Copics, you may have noticed, if you use one color a lot, sometimes they'll get ink in the lid and ink on the base here, like where I'm cleaning, and it'll be hard to put the lid on and off. I find that happens on some of my well-loved markers, and so I'm going to go through and clean those up as well. I just want to be careful not to touch the tip too much there, so I don't want to start thinning out the ink that I've already got in that chisel nib that's working really well. But I think this is looking a lot better than it was. Let's try this off. And that's looking great, so I'm going to come in with a clean Q-tip and just clean up this edge here. This is the one I use the most, and this is the one that is mostly dirty. And I'll show you the cap as well, because it is a mess, and I'm going to give that a quick clean as well. So again, I don't know if you can see on camera, but there's a white spot on my nib right there, and I know it's just pulling that ink into the barrel from where I put it on Hopefully once it has time to sit, it will distribute the ink between those ends and rejuvenate itself again. And if not, I'm going to add more ink, but I think it's going to do that. I think that will work. Just going to touch this with some ink. And you want to make sure when you're filling it that you hold it on an angle so the ink runs down into the barrel too. And so I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to do the cap next. So you can tell of these two caps which one I've used a lot and which one it looks like I've never taken the lid off of. So I'm going to just give this a cleaning as well. Just use Q-tip. I like the Q-tip because it fits in there perfect and it gets down deep in there because that's where the mess always happens, and it gets so sticky to put these lids on if it's all clouded with ink. But this is cleaning up real nice. Wow, that looks so much better, and I'm not even done. It's just cleaner for sure. It's so nice. It's nice not to have that buildup and to know that this lid's going to go on super easy. And I'm not going to have to fight with it. So, I mean, the rubbing alcohol is quick and does the job. So now I'm going to cap this. And then I'm going to put on my super clean cap and try not to hit the edge. Hopefully, hopefully, hopefully. Looks like I got pretty good there. And I'm just going to try a little bit more. It looks like some of it actually came off. I've got some splotches, like some speckle marks, so it looks like that might be working. I just need to put a little more alcohol on it, so yay! I've cleaned up my Copic and I don't have to buy a new one. Because I know that's something I'd probably do. So this guy's all cleaned up, and so I'm going to put him back in my Copic case, and then the one thing I have left to do is to clean this because I made a mess of it. I've got some more Q-tips left over. I'm just going to quickly run some alcohol along the threads here so that this doesn't stick when I put the lid on. And use my dry end to just pick up any leftovers here. That looks really good. If you guys have any cleaning tips, leave them in the comments below. I'd be interested to hear them and to share them with others. And if you have any refilling tips too, any processes you do, or kind of interesting things that you've learned and that's something that makes it easier, or even how much you put in your markers when you refill them, how much you find that they need, or how many refills you get out of the container. Let me know. I would be curious to know sort of the life or the longevity of these. So this is looking more like factory. Much, much, much better. And then these lids just twist on. So I was trying to pull it off at the beginning, but they actually just twist on really nice. And so they will keep the ink from, it's a nice tight fit, so it keeps the ink from falling out. And I store these horizontally as well. They have like a little bit of an angle where they lean up on the shelf, but it's nice because then I can see what color they are. So I'm hoping as I get more of these, maybe to make a shelf just for these, or some sort of storage container, maybe where I can keep them upright even and see these numbers at a glance, because that'll be super easy for picking them out. So I just want to show you how much I filled this. So I'm literally out this much ink. So that's how much ink I've put in my marker, and maybe that's not enough. I'm going to try it after it's had time to sit a while and then see if this brush end is actually working okay, and if it's not, I'll put a little bit more in it. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this journey. This was a little bit different, and I'm hoping that you just might have learned something, or maybe it was helpful in some way, but I thought I would share it with you because it was definitely an adventure for me, and I'm a mess. I have the dirty hands and the messy desk to definitely go with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified as I post more videos. Thank you so much for watching.